How did you get to New York City?
I moved to New York when I was 17 to go to NYU to try to be an actor.
An actor?
An actor, yeah.
Okay.
But realized on like day 2 of school that I did not want to be an actor, but had come to NYU after auditioning and yeah.
What had preceded that? Were you an aspiring actress for many, many years prior to that, I assume?
I mean, in the way that anyone is when they do, community theater and high school theater and grow up in Florida, but not in any sort of serious professional way. But I'd always been writing. There was a playwriting contest that my high school was participating in, a national playwriting contest that I had not entered, but my English teacher sort of pulled me out of class and yelled at me and said, you have to write a play for this. And so I had to one night to write a play, wrote this little 1-act play that ended up winning the national competition and was produced at the Kennedy Center.
Whoa.
The summer before I moved to New York to be an actor. And I went to the Kennedy Center to see this little 1-act production with my mom in the summer before I moved to New York. And it was one of those like instant, I went into the theater thinking I wanted to be an actor and left being like, writing is so much better than acting. It really was this like instant thing. But moved to New York still trying to be an actor, but started taking writing classes and tried to switch my major, but wasn't allowed to. So just tried to stayed an actor and wrote all through school. And yeah.
What was the 1-act play about?
It was about a playwright who couldn't think of anything to write, and which I thought was very clever. And then when I went to DC to see the plays, like half the plays were about playwrights who couldn't think of anything to write. It was a very popular thing to write about when you're 17, I guess. Yeah.
Do you come from a family of writers?
No, I come from a family of comedians, though.
Really?
My dad's a comic magician, and my uncles are all comedians, and yeah.
Before your English teacher pulled you out of class and berated you, did you already consider yourself a bit of a writer? Was that something that you had established skills in prior?
Yeah, I always was writing. I wrote short stories and poems growing up. And then in high school, I started writing screenplays. I kind of taught myself how to write a screenplay. I got the screenwriting software and was just for fun writing screenplays, but didn't realize that I just don't think I thought you could be a playwright for a living, just because certainly in like small working class Florida, there just were no living playwrights around. None of the theaters produced plays by anyone younger than Neil Simon or Shakespeare. So I just didn't think I knew that was an option.
What did you find yourself writing about at that time? Were there themes that you remember being interested in?
I think at the time and for a long time after, I was just copycatting things that I liked and learning. And I think that happens a lot when you're a young writer, is that like you are developing your own taste and your own voice, and you can have craft before you have something to say. And so I think for years I was doing that. I would see a play that I really liked and moved me, and then I'd sort of write my version of it. So I started writing like absurdist, Beckett-inspired Edward Albee ripoffs, and then kind of moved more towards naturalism. I was just trying to figure out where my voice was, and that took a long time. I mean, I'm still figuring that out, but I definitely have a strong sense of the stories that I should be writing and have a right to write now in a way that I didn't at 17.
At NYU, it sounds like you were trying to switch majors, you were mentioning. Did you basically give up acting altogether and just start writing on the side? What is that trajectory?
I mean, I would have if I could, but during school, I was not allowed to give it up. So I was studying at the Lee Strasberg Institute, which was like a 2-year conservatory program of acting and singing and Tai Chi and dance and very full-on acting training. And I went to the head of the studio and said, like, they're not letting me switch majors. I don't want to be an actor. Like, what do I do? And they were incredible in that they were like, there's a history with people that have trained with Strasberg and the history with the group theater that writers are a part of actor training, and you can approach the actor training as a writer would, and we'll give you rehearsal space, and they ended up giving me my first play commission. They hired me as a teacher after I graduated. They actually supported my writing career, even though I stayed an acting major. And I just sort of told all my teachers, like, I'm training as an actor, but I really want to be a writer and eventually a director. Yeah.
Did you have a sense of what that would look like for you post-graduation? I don't know if you had a model for a successful playwright that you were trying to copy or a general lane you were trying to get in. Did you have a sense of how you could potentially make it as a writer?
I didn't. I think I was figuring it out on the fly because I didn't, again, like it took me a while to find other writers, especially because I was an acting major. So I think the one thing that I knew you could do was go to grad school. So that was really my focus in school, was just write a good enough play to get into grad school. And I applied to grad school coming out of undergrad. I didn't get in anywhere. I worked at a talent agency for a year, writing another play to apply to grad school. And then that play, I got in everywhere I applied. And so I did 2 years at an MFA program at Hunter College in the city. And then I went straight from there and did a second MFA in playwriting at Yale. So I did 5 years of grad school just because I was looking for any opportunity to live a life where writing was the main thing that I was doing and not working a day job.
What did you learn, if anything, from the people you were around in these writing grad programs about what a life of words might look like? You know, I don't know if you were primarily around people who were trying to do what you do now, but what were the conceivable futures or careers you were considering at that point?
I think I was so focused on trying to be a playwright that I was I had a pretentious idea in my head of like, I want to be a pure theater artist playwright. And I really was looking down on playwrights who then transitioned into film and TV. And then I don't even know if this is answering the question, but I think having then, quote, made it as a playwright, and my whole goal was to just get plays off Broadway. Did that and then realized how little money you actually do get paid, and how you don't have health insurance. And suddenly the idea of why people write for film and TV is a lot more practical. But also I found a lot of creative control in film and TV that I was told would not be the case, and that theater is where you get all the creative control. And I have not found that necessarily to be true, actually. Yeah.
What about becoming a pure playwright was so appealing?
I just loved theater. I mean, I just love theater. I still do. I just love, I think it was all, I was coming from Florida, and it was all wrapped up in this idea of what being an artist and living in New York would look like, and this romantic idea of coming to New York and just seeing, when I was growing up in Florida, we would take trips to the city, and all I would want to do is see as many shows as I could. And so the idea of when I moved to New York at 17 that I could just like go out on a Tuesday night around the corner from my dorm and buy a ticket to something, and be taken to another world. And it was only happening in that space for a limited amount of time. And it was like part of the privilege of living in New York. Like movies you can see anywhere. And that it was a direct result of like living in a city that valued culture in a certain way, which I was so hungry for, I think, growing up in the South. So, yeah.
Did you mostly just want to cultivate those kind of experiences, or did you find over the years you had a clarity on what you wanted to say in the plays that you wanted to write?
No, I think what I was after was like a life in the arts, I think. And I think what I wanted to say, I was figuring that out all through at least through my first grad program. I had an amazing teacher, this playwright Tina Howe, at Hunter College, who was the first person that really said like, this is who you are. She had this amazing ability to sort of reflect back to you your own personality and make you realize that the things that you take for granted in your own identity are actually the things that make you unique as a writer, because the most universal things can be found from being so specific. And she was the person that really pulled those things out of me and encouraged me to write plays set in Florida. And at the time I was like always looking for something that felt quote unquote authentic. And I was writing plays set in the South Side of Chicago, and I'd never been to Chicago, or I, wrote a play set in post, Katrina, New Orleans, and had spent no time there. I was like looking for authenticity where it's such a cliche to realize, but it's like a journey to realize that your most authentic stories are the ones that you know and that come from your own life experience. So, and I don't write autobiographical plays, but I think everything that I've worked on since, there's a seed of myself in there that the whole thing sort of grows around. Whereas before I was just grasping for good stories, I think. Yeah.
So you went to Hunter and then you went to Yale.
Yeah. NYU Hunter Yale.
NYU Hunter Yale. And then I'd love to hear about how you tried to, and how you eventually did begin to take the words you're writing down, get them into the brains and mouths of actors, and begin to have your own shows be created. What did you do to try to create opportunities? Did you already have those after grad school? What happened?
I mean, I feel like every overnight success story is like many years in the making. Yeah. So my break came, I'm putting break in quotes, but my big break came when I was in my third year at Yale. I had my first play produced off-Broadway. And that was this play called Ugly Lies the Bone that I had started maybe 3 or 4 years prior when I was in my first grad program. But I was relentless for years before that as far as writing constantly new plays, either renting a space or borrowing a space, hiring actors with my own money or asking friends to do readings, and just constantly staging these readings of the plays that I was writing, and then ruthlessly inviting industry to come and see those plays. I feel like now I talk about it, but I had like invented a alter ego Gmail account, this like fake producer name that I had made up, because I realized that when you don't have an agent, you have to get in. There's like, all theaters separate scripts into two piles. One pile is like if you have an agent or a producer vouching for you, you're solicited, and one pile if you're just a random person sending an unsolicited manuscript. Yep. So you got to get into the solicited pile, which I learned from interning at these theaters. So I had made up a fake Gmail account and solicited my own, like pretended I was this producer with a made up name, and it worked. And I would send these emails out inviting people to these readings. And even if they didn't come to the reading, it meant that you went into the different pile. And also my strategy was just to do it over and over and over again, so that I was doing like a reading a month. So that by the time, it takes so long, so that by the time you kind of like get on the radar of anyone, it feels like you have some like heat behind you, because the narrative about me became I had readings all over the place, but that was really me half the time, like self-producing these readings and inviting people and constantly submitting to every contest and workshop and writing conference, and most of the time getting rejected from them for a long time. And then I wrote this play, Ugly Lies the Bone, and that was like I had one play before that had gotten like finalist everywhere. For a couple of years, the plays I was writing would get finalist for everything. And then this play I wrote, Ugly Lies the Bone, suddenly like won all of the things. And that was the first play I had that was produced. That was produced at Roundabout Theater Company in their smallest place, their smallest theater that they debut new writers, which was like a 99-seat black box theater. And then that play got picked up by the National Theatre in London and went to like the biggest stage, in the UK, and this is like 900-seat theater. So for my emerging time period was actually quite compressed, because suddenly I went in a very big scale almost immediately. Yeah.
Tell me about that play. What's it about? Why'd you write it?
That play is it's set in Florida, in my hometown in Florida, Cape Canaveral, which is a town on the Space Coast that was supportive of the, shuttle program. Yeah. And the time that I went to college, the shuttle program was shutting down. And so the area between that and the 2008 financial collapse, that area was just sort of devastated economically. And a best friend of mine from high school became a therapist at a VA center in the area. And we were talking a lot about soldiers coming back from Afghanistan and Iraq, looking for a way to start over, but coming back specifically to this town that was also looking for a way to start over. And so I just started doing a lot of research and talking to veterans, and have found this pain management, virtual reality therapy that was being used to treat veterans at VA centers who are coming back with these extreme burns. So all of that is to say the play is about a female burn survivor coming back to her Florida hometown, trying to reintegrate into civilian life and doing this virtual reality pain management therapy. And the play is sort of set half in VR and half in the reality of her relationships and her trying to navigate this new civilian her new reality post-war and post-injury and post change to the area that she used to call home.
Were you surprised that it was that play that made it? I mean, it sounds like you were fairly prolific at a young age and just creating a lot of material. Did there seem to be something about that play that you felt justified a larger audience where you're not surprised that was the one that kind of made it?
I think looking back, it makes complete sense to me because it had taken all the plays I was writing up until that point to finally lock into what I was trying to say. And these are the people I want to say it about. And this is the area. And this is what I care about in society and the world. And this is how I can approach politics from a side angle point of view. But it took me like writing 10 plays before of experimenting in style and form and character and subject matter and learning structure and getting better, really just getting better as a writer. I think every play that anyone ever writes a play, you think it's the best thing you've ever written.
Yeah.
And the world has to sort of tell you it's not ready yet. And sometimes you have to disagree or agree with that. But what that did was keep forcing me to just keep churning out these plays. And I probably thought a couple plays before that were ready. And they were almost ready. And then every play I've written since then has gotten produced. So it really was, for me anyway, I don't know if it's like that for every writer, but it was like a lot of experimenting, a lot of getting almost there. And then once I finally locked into it, it was like, oh, this is the beginning. Even though I have all this back catalog of plays that I'll never allow to see the light of day, really. But yeah.
The business side of this. So I don't know anything about this world. Someone buys the rights to your material. They buy it outright. How does this financially change your station, your circumstances, if at all?
They don't actually buy it outright. You just write what you write. You write for plays anyway, you write it on spec. Usually you just write a play and then you send it out to the world and you send it to theaters. And then hopefully a theater says yes. And then a theater will pay you a certain amount of money to produce that play. Sometimes you get a share of ticket sales. And you own the play. It's different than film and TV. Film and TV, you get hired by a company and then the company or the studio owns the material. As a playwright, you own it. So every time that play gets produced, you make some money from that. Yeah.
So I assume London is its final destination. Was that the culmination of this play? This play
has been done. Probably the biggest scale production was done in London at the National, but this play is my most produced play, and it's been done in Germany. It's been done in Spain. It's been done more than 100 productions across the country, regional theaters, high schools do it. So that's been really thrilling. Over that play premiered 10 years ago. So that was like the start of my professional career in 2015. And that play is still like, there's probably somewhere right now where it's being done. And that's been so amazing because I just learned a lot from seeing the same script done in every size theater, every configuration, from high schools to the National Theatre in London. And that I've just learned a lot about like the scale of how you write and how you can't predict for where the plays end up. The only thing you can really control is the storytelling and how you have to try to put all the storytelling into the characters and into the dialogue because you can't control the staging of it. Yeah, I think that's the thing I learned the most from that one. And also up until that point, I hadn't been seeing my plays produced. So I'd been writing largely for readings, even though, because you have to do the readings before a production happens. And when you don't get the production, you just see your plays done at music stands and like in a reading setting. So I think I didn't realize how much that was limiting intellectually the scale of the ideas that I was trying to write about too.
What did you do next? I mean, it seems like this sort of launched your career, and then you had probably more opportunities. It sounds like every play you've made since then, you said, I think, has been produced. What did you do next?
What did I do next? I had a back catalog, luckily, of plays that I'd written in grad school. So I was ready to go with a few more plays. So I had a play. The next play I had done was at Playwrights Horizons, this play called This Flat Earth that was done in New York. Then I had at the same time as that a play called Amy and the Orphans that was also done off-Broadway. Then I had a play in California called The Year to Come that was supposed to transfer to New York in 2020, but that got canceled because of COVID. I started writing films, really. I got my first screenwriting job because I had 2 plays running in New York at the same time. And the director, David O. Russell and John Krasinski, were looking for someone to adapt this book that they were working on together. And they had come and seen the play. So that led to the screenwriting stuff. It feels like each job sort of leads to the next, to the next, to the next. All the way through I just had 3 shows last year. One was an adaptation of this movie called The Artist, which won the Oscar in 2012, which we did in London as a dance play, sort of musical. Queen of Versailles, which opened last summer in Boston at the Colonial, is on Broadway right now. And this play I did with Adrian Brody in London called The Fear of 13, which will hopefully have a future life soon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm very interested in people's habits and the consistency of how, especially creative people, discipline themselves to be consistently prolific. And it sounds like you have made a lot of art in your days. I don't know if there have been consistent patterns to your routines that you have found to be very helpful for you in continuing to produce, but I'd love to hear about how you think about that and what has helped you, if anything.
I think what's actually helped me is getting less and less precious about my routine, because I think I used to think I needed to have a whole day to write or a whole weekend or 8 hours, or you know what I mean? And I can do that. If I have the time, I can lock myself. I definitely can lock myself. And I love doing it, like locking myself away for a weekend and just writing around the clock. But I think working on as many things as I'm working on at any given time now, which can be 10 to 15 projects at any time, you really can't be that precious about it because you'll never have that much undivided time, because I'll be in rehearsal or I'll have to travel to a show or have meetings every day. So I think what's helped me over time is that I think of it as like sculpting, in that I do a little bit here and a little bit there. And if I can get 20 minutes in, and then in the morning, and then if I have 20 minutes later, and I just think any time that I can chip away at something is valuable time. And also because I have to travel so much for writing, and have been lucky enough to have shows done in London and living in strange apartments across the world. You know, I think I don't have it's made me have to have a flexible writing routine and not be so precious about like my perfect desk and my perfect computer and my perfect, you know, when I can write at home and I have a really nice computer with a nice view and a candle, of course that's great and ideal, but that's often not where I find myself writing. So just doing it more than anything, doing it whenever you have the time, that's the only, I think, writing routine that has worked for me. I have to be flexible.
Given that fact, if you had an ideal day, do you find that in your mind you noticeably create better work when you've slept a certain amount, exercised a certain amount, eaten a certain diet? Like, what are the things, if anything, that you've noticed over the years really do, not being jet lagged, like what that help you be at your best, given that it's not always possible?
I think when I can hermit away and like clear 3 or 4 days, it doesn't really need to be more than that, but especially important for first draft when you're world building. Different when you're doing rewrites. Rewrites, you have something you can print out and carry around with you and take to a coffee shop. And I tend to like to do rewrites on hard copies and like walk around in my life with the script with me. So I like being able to dip in and out of a rewrite. But when you're world building and you're creating plot and character and everything from scratch, I think the only way to really do it is to like chain yourself to a desk. Don't talk to anyone. Don't go out at night. Don't, and don't even waste time like cooking food for yourself, like order it or whatever, like do nothing else. Maybe shower. and just like, I find that process to be essential actually to just getting it. You just have to go really deep. And once you do that, like for a few days, then the world is established in your mind and but if you can really protect a few days where you're thinking about nothing else, that is, for me, I have to sort of do that on once or twice on every project. Yeah.
I like that phrase, world building.
Yeah.
How the hell do you do that? I mean, given that you have so many different projects, so many different characters running around, I'm sure some of this is, or a lot of this is just ability, like natural ability that I certainly don't have. I don't think most people have. Do you have just random characters that appear in your imagination randomly? How do you go about building these fictional worlds?
I think for me, no, I don't, I'm jealous of writers that will just like, a character will just come to them, or I think it's usually like a question in my own personal life I'm trying to work out, or a question about the world that I'm trying to work out, and hopefully finding a place where a question about my own life intersects with a question about the world. And I tend to start every project, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, with a deep dive research into that subject matter, whatever that might be, which has led me over time to start writing more and more nonfiction stories, or just stories inspired by real people, or biopics, or the Queen of Versailles based on a documentary, Fear of 13 is based on a real life person. But even when I'm writing purely fiction, I still start from this like very heavily research based thing, like Ugly Lies the Bone, talking to veteran, knowing I want to write about my hometown and about the world of veterans, and then almost approaching it like a journalist where I'm seeking a story in that space. And then, but it depends, some plays are more personal. Sometimes I write directly about people I know in my life and try to hide that a little bit. They always come from different places, but no, a character does not just appear to me. Sometimes, I mean, I do keep a document in my phone of just interesting words I hear, lines people say, funny bits of dialogue I overhear. I'm a very big eavesdropper. And keeping a running sort of tally of that. I have a musician friend who he records just bits of ambient music he hears throughout his day. It's kind of the same thing.
Do you prefer having 10 different projects going on simultaneously? In an ideal world, would you like to reduce that to more
I would
like
love
one or two?
To reduce it, but I just don't think that's realistic, because you don't know what timeline these things are going to happen on. You often, when you start a project, it could be 2 years, it could be 5 years. You don't know when a theater is going to have a slot. You don't know what things are going to succeed and what is going to fail. I don't know how anybody does it with less. I know most writers do fewer projects, but I don't really know how to do that. I feel like it probably is, I'm still in like maybe a scarcity mindset where I'm like, the opportunities are coming and you have to say yes, and I take them. And I've tried to be better about saying no to things I actually really don't care about. But I think the only protection you have as a writer, because you are not in control of the production, how it turns out, who produces it, when it's going to happen, the only control you have is writing. and writing more and having lots of irons in the fire and chasing your own curiosities to the next project. So, so long as I am still interested and engaged in the world and curious about things, hopefully I'll have a huge slate of projects that will keep me busy and I can keep pivoting between.
This may be the same question, but who have been your favorite playwrights, New York playwrights, and who do you admire? Like, who are the people you have looked up to that you think are just terrific at this work?
Oh, that's a nice question. I think Sam Hunter's plays I really love. I really admire. I feel like as a writer, I'm always like stretching my voice in as many directions and genres as I can possibly do. And I think Sam bravely does the opposite. He tends to write plays about where he's from, and he just, instead of going wide, he goes deep, really deep in these particular characters. I really admire the like slice of America that he's claimed as his own. I love the playwright Mike Liu. I wish I could see more of his work done in New York. He's a good friend. He's really funny. Writes sort of wildly. Tori Schuyler Sampson's a playwright that I went to school with who I adore. I think writes dialogue better than anyone I know. I'll say those three. Yeah. But I could go on and on. Yeah.
I don't know if there are subjects to your mind that, as a writer, as a playwright, to me, one of the great things as just a fan is the freedom of what may be coming at you in these characters and how that could be thought-provoking or change your opinion or help you see a perspective about life or human nature in a different kind of way. I don't know if there are themes or subjects that right now, if you were given carte blanche to just create a new world, when you look around our country and the world, that you think is ripe or deserves its own production, its own play. I'm sure you think about this a lot, but like, what's on your mind? What do you look around and think there's room for great art here to showcase a truth about something?
Well, the thing I have on my mind right now is this play I just did with Adrian Brody in London, which is a true story about this man, Nick Yarris, who is wrongfully imprisoned on death row for 22 years. And that play, we did it in London. I really want to do that in New York because it really is about the American criminal legal system in a way that in London, it's about a person, but it isn't necessarily about the legal system because the audience isn't sharing in that same legal system. So they're not as complicit in the storytelling because you're able to, when we did the play in London, the audience is able to still hold it at a certain distance and go like, oh, this is what they do in America. Isn't that crazy how horrible the legal system is in America? Whereas I really want to do that play here because we just won't have that distance. But I think that story just came to me. I happened to come across Nick's story. It made me realize my own blind spots as a liberal person who probably would have voted against the death penalty, but not really had any sort of personal connection to the death penalty, not had a personal reason for that, until I found Nick's story and realized that 2 decisions away could have been my life. And I feel like hopefully the best version of the play is that it does that for the audience so that when you go vote about something, you're not just voting on statistics, you're voting on a personal story and maybe you remember Nick's story when you go to vote the next time. So I feel like that's the thing that I'm always looking for. And also looking for characters that feel very far away from me on first glance, like a man who was a car thief in Philly who found himself on death row. What would I ever have in common with that person? But actually in the process of writing it and in radical empathy, you realize you're not at all far apart from that person. So that is not really an answer to your question, but that's like the kind of thing that I'm always looking for and am always on the hunt for. These blind spots in my own life and my own politics, and then finding ways inside stories that feel far away, but realizing you are the same as your neighbor, or could be had you been brought up in a different way or made different life decisions. And
kind of a window into another world that you know very little about, but can help you understand it a little bit. What happened with Nick's story? What's important? What resonates still about?
Oh God, Nick is just an amazing person, and he's
still alive.
He's still alive. Yeah, he's in his 60s. But what's incredible about Nick's story is that he ended up on death row entirely through his own doing, but without being guilty. And it was like he did tell a big lie that ended he was in jail for a petty crime, and wanting to get out of that petty crime, looking like he didn't want to serve his prison sentence, found a newspaper in his cell about a rape murder, made up a story that he had a tip on this case, that he pretended he knew someone who was involved, thinking the person was dead, the name that he gave them. Turns out the person wasn't dead. When they went to talk to the person had a perfect alibi. He had given this fake tip. Then the police didn't know why he knew all the details about this crime, and they pinned the whole thing on him. And it was his own lying that did him in, but in a completely roundabout way. And Nick is an incredible storyteller. It's something he learned to do in childhood to avoid certain things in his life. And it got bigger and bigger and bigger until it landed him on death row in one of the cruelest prison systems in America, in Pennsylvania, and this like Quaker prison system. And he was forgotten about. And once you are guilty in America, you're innocent until you're proven guilty. But then once you're guilty, it is nearly, I don't want to say nearly impossible, because people do get off, but you are suddenly up against the entire system that has said you're guilty, that we're supposed to trust the system. And the appeals process is just agonizingly slow. And the process of just getting all it took was a DNA test to get him off. But the process of getting that DNA is insane. The bureaucracy that's working against you. And he was in solitary confinement, and his only company were the books that he was reading, and a prison volunteer who he ended up falling in love with and getting married while he was in prison. Wow. And it is this sort of beautiful, actually, love story at the center of it, and him falling in love with language and learning to tell his own story in a different way. It's this incredible story, performed brilliantly, I will say, by Adrian Brody, who I ended up tailoring the role for once he said he was going to do it. And it's a true story. And I feel like I'm more and more interested in just things that start from like a place of truth. Yeah.
Queen of Versailles.
Okay.
How
Queen
did
of
that happen?
Versailles
What's the story?
Is based also on a documentary that I fell in love with when I saw it. It's about these billionaires in Florida who they started buying up pieces of my hometown. So that's how I became aware of the story, and I had seen the documentary, and they tried to build a replica of the Palace of Versailles in Orlando. And
Only in
Florida. And they want to build the biggest home in America, and they sort of bankrupt themselves in the process. That's where the doc ends. And then the story continued actually after the doc ends, where the doc ends with them losing their money, but they ended up getting their money back and have continued to build this house. And the house is still unfinished. They've been building it for over 20 years, well over $100 million sunk into this project. And it has become, to me, I think it's this amazing microcosm of all that's good and bad and ugly about the American dream, and this unquenchable thirst for more that they have, but that everyone in the audience has, whether you like to admit it or not, where you get, like the kids' book, like you get it when you give a mouse a cookie. I don't know if you know that book, but it's like you give a mouse a cookie and then he wants a glass of milk, and then you get the glass of milk and you need a napkin. and we all have, even if we're all not building the biggest house in America, in a capitalist society, we're all unsatisfied with our lot to a certain extent. And I just think it's just this larger than life characters in Florida that I love writing about, people like that.
And it's a musical.
And it's musical, yeah.
Their plan was to make it a tourist attraction. What was the long-term objective?
They wanted to live in it. Yeah. No, they just want to live in it. Yeah.
Because this is the most recent of your productions, I'd love to hear about how it actually got going.
Sure.
You work on, I think you said 5 years you've been working on this.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear about the beginning of your efforts on this to it opening this year. I mean, this is 2020, 2021, around there.
Yeah. We wrote it for 5 years. I tried to get the rights to it probably for 3 to 5 years before that. I saw the doc maybe in 2015, maybe 10 years. Yeah, I was definitely talking about it when I was at grad school. So thought it would make an amazing – I had never had an idea for a musical before. I thought it would make an amazing musical because the characters just felt so over the top and so larger than life. And the scale of what they were trying to do with also the mirrors to the French aristocracy and the French Revolution and the wealth disparity at the time of the French Revolution mirroring the wealth disparity now. I just thought there was this like huge story that could be told, which musical theater lends itself to large storytelling. And when I went about trying to get the rights, was told it was probably going to be impossible because the family had sued the filmmakers when the doc came out and had lost, but there was a lot of bad blood and a lot of legal fees that were covered. And but I just kind of kept talking about it, and I find that is the way when you can't get an idea out of your head, if you just kind of keep talking about it, eventually it will magnetize the right people. And so whenever anyone said, do you have a crazy idea for a musical? I would talk about the Queen of Versailles, and eventually people I found the right people who were also excited by it. I happened to be, when I had my play at the National, I happened to be seated at a dinner next to this amazing director, Michael Arden, who directed it on Broadway. And he said the same thing that a lot of people were asking me at the time if I had any ideas for a musical. We both got really excited about Queen of Versailles. We got excited about the idea of writing it for Kristen Chenoweth, who felt like the perfect Jackie Siegel. And Michael knew Stephen Schwartz because he had done a production with him years prior. So we approached Stephen Schwartz. We approached a producer who actually had a background in getting film rights, which was a special skill that was necessary on this one. I had someone in my own life introduce me to the Siegel family, also had somebody else introduce me to the filmmakers. So we just, over a period of time, courted the right people, and we had to get both the life rights of the family and the doc rights of the filmmakers and get both parties to agree that they would not have any artistic control, which is a big thing it's a big ask because we all agreed we weren't going to do it if they were going to tell us what the show was. So that was a period of time of getting them to trust us and getting them to both trust us and also sign away all of their creative control. So that the rights process was lengthy on this one. And then we got Stephen, we got Michael, the director, and then the three of us started outlining it during COVID. That took a period of time. Then the first people I saw in person that were not in my immediate family during COVID were those two collaborators. And we went to a house upstate and started actually like talking about the show and writing it. And then writing a musical and workshopping a musical takes a really long time. And then we did an out-of-town production last year in Boston and then opened on Broadway 3 weeks ago.
At what point did you know definitively this is going to get made? Was it an intuition once you started getting these big names involved in the process? When did you know that?
I think we started to have an inclination when the names were signing on, but many, many musicals get big names signed on and don't ever see the light of day still, and that gets stuck in this sort of workshopping hell. I think it was probably, there were a number of workshop industry presentations that we did. At one of those, we will have been told that we were going to Boston at least. And then Broadway was always dependent on the reviews that we got in Boston, which luckily we got amazing reviews in Boston.
You mentioned some of the themes that I think resonated with you about why this play, this musical is so interesting. What do you think resonated with the other people that signed on? I mean, you got some of the biggest individuals in all of musical theater to get in. Why do you think it worked?
Stephen Schwartz was interesting because we approached him and said, we want to adapt Queen of Versailles, the doc. He watched it. He passed immediately and was like, I don't want to care about these people. I don't want to spend the next 5 years of my life with these people. And then it took us another year to get the rights. And it was like a year deeper into the Trump presidency. And we went back to him one more time and we said, like, are you sure you don't want it? Before we move on, we should make sure you don't want to do it. He rewatched it. And I remember the call where he was like, these people that I want to just write off and say, like, they have nothing to do with my life, eat the rich, fuck these billionaires. Like, I can't write them off anymore. Our country's being run by billionaires. This is from pop culture with the Kardashians to Succession to the world is obsessed with wealth in a way that he's like, I wish it wasn't that way. But like, I actually am interested in why the line between reality TV star and billionaire and president is very thin right now. And even as liberal people who don't maybe believe billionaires should exist, they do exist. Do you know what I mean? They do exist and they are sort of running our country. So it's something that we would all like to write off and say this is not the version of society we would like to see in life or on stage. But that is not the world we live in. The world we live in is this world. So it bears examining. And that was something that we talked a lot about in the beginning, and his change just in what he was noticing culturally between 2019 to 2020 or 2020 to 2021. I don't remember which year he said no to when he said yes, but that the world was changing and that the world has changed also a great deal from when we did it in Boston to when we did it now. When we did it in Boston, Trump was not president. We did do it now. Trump is president. So I think the appetite in the audience may have shifted for seeing the mirror that the show is putting up to society, but that's the risk that you take when you write about current events and real people and characters that are not that are anti-heroes and that aren't heroes in the traditional sense. It's
a satire, fundamentally?
It is a satire. Parts of it are satirical. I wouldn't say it's a straight up satire. I think parts of it are satirical, but it is also grounded in there. She just is herself as a person inherently satirical. And the interesting part is like, how much is she aware of her own satire? How much is she not aware of it? But you are watching a character going after a goal 110% and then losing that goal, but still being determined to get it back, and then getting it back. And then that sort of ultimately costs her soul and the things that she cares about most in the world. And she's given a few more opportunities to change and realize that her goal was not all that it was cracked up to be. And she is unable to change despite being offered all of these opportunities to change. So it doesn't end necessarily in a place of satire, but it sort of starts off in the place of satire because that's how she talks about her own life. When she talks about her own life, it's like this American myth. But it's like this American myth gone wrong by the end.
Damn.
Which is a lot for a musical, maybe too much for a musical, but I'm interested, certainly. There's a lot of musicals right now that are really wonderful, and I don't mean to knock it, but what you're seeing a lot on Broadway right now are like successful movies being repackaged and repurposed for musicals. And that's a much safer choice. It's a much safer investment for your millions of dollars that cost to make a musical. So I do applaud the producers, for better or for worse, of our show for really taking a big, big risk financially and creatively, that we have a musical about current events, fairly political show. I mean, we have characters from the French Revolution congratulating the American 1% on duping the peasant class for voting against their own self-interest. You know, like it's as blatantly political as you can be. The fact that that's being done on a commercial Broadway house at all is sort of an amazing achievement. It's a strange political show that is not the most commercial Broadway thing you would think of, I think.
How did you feel about how Queen of Versailles turned out?
I'm really proud of the show. And it's a controversial show. I was telling you before, I've never had a show that's been so divisive. I find that mostly really exciting, because I think that means that you've made something that people are really reacting against or for. And I am not unaware that we got critics' pick in the New York Times and a number of rave reviews and a number of really bad reviews. I think that's sort of exciting. I mean, I wish that translated to more people getting to see it, but that mixed reaction actually is kind of thrilling.
The last question I'd love to ask you, and I usually close with this theme. You've already done so much in your career, and I like to close by asking people about how they think about success in their life, mostly in their work. If we were to talk in a couple years, or you think about your future, what else do you want to do? How do you define a successful life, a successful career to yourself at this point?
I think for me, that would look like kind of what it looks like now, but just getting to do more of it, which is chasing things that I'm interested in, taking that idea to people that I find to be really talented, whether that's co-writers like someone like Stephen Schwartz or an actor like Adrian Brody, sort of convincing them into these worlds that I feel like are important and deserving of an audience, and creating these projects with people that I really admire and learning from them, and working with them and standing behind a huge variety of stories in different genres, in different forms, in comedy, drama, musicals, plays, movies. I think if I can keep doing that, that would be what success is. You're never going to, I think you can't chase like commercial financial success. I think the only thing I'm interested in doing is just being able to tell these strange and varied stories with strange and varied people.
Yeah. What a cool life.
Yeah. No, it's a very lucky life. Yeah. It's very lucky.
Thank you for doing this.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.